Video lesson 5.2, the fall of Rome. So here we're going to kind of detail what kind of happens in between the fall of the Roman Empire, the effects of that fall, and then we're going to introduce kind of how the population and power is regained in Europe in what we call the early Middle Ages. So this is going to kind of ease us into our unit here. So first of all, what social, cultural, political, and economic factors led to the fall of Rome? So we're going to go back to 306 CE. So remember, CE is after the year 0. So we have the Emperor Constantine, who was emperor from 306 CE to 337 CE. And this emperor had far more individual power and was truly seen as a divine monarch. Now the word divine means that he gets his power from God. So they truly see as God giving Constantine his power. And here's the shift. So we start to see Constantine have some growing trouble. So he is the emperor of Rome, and he restructures the economic system to finance his large military so that they can protect all the borders and continue to expand Roman territory. He coerces people into government positions. This means he did it forcibly. They did not really have a choice to take these government positions. And like we kind of introduced the last video lesson, the poor were burdened with extremely high taxes. So not only did they bear the most responsibility for supplying the government with their money in the form of taxes, but he raised taxes to make that even more of a burden for the poor. Here's the key change. So we have Rome, the capital of the Roman Empire, right here. This, all the pink and orange represents what was currently under Roman rule. But Constantine moves the capital from Rome to a city that he calls Constantinople. He names the city after himself. So this is on the eastern side of the empire, which was known as Byzantium. And this is important because we see soon that the Roman Empire is going to split into Western Roman Empire and Eastern Roman Empire. The seeds for the split is moving a capital requires a lot of moving power, so it requires a lot of resources, a lot of people, a lot of forces, a lot of everything to move everything that is in a capital. It also requires a lot of money to do that and wealth, and it requires a lot of resources. That also means that the center of learning, the center of culture, the highest place in society, the capital, is no longer here. Now it is over here. So these people have no way to access all of the things that they used to have because now their capital is 300 miles away. This is better because it's a more central location. However, the people in Rome are now going to feel the effects. So while he is in Constantinople ruling the Roman Empire, Constantine experiences a conversion, which first gets its start in what we call the Edict of Milan, and this was in 313 CE. An edict is any sort of law or statute. So this allowed for the toleration of Christianity. So this is the law that made Christianity no longer illegal, although it was not promoted by the government in any way. However, Constantine experiences this kind of vision. So he sees in a dream before the night of a big battle, he sees a symbol of, in this name you shall conquer. So he hears the voice of what he believed to be God or Jesus, and it was saying, in this name you shall conquer, represented by this symbol. And this was the chi, which is the Greek letter chi, or X, and then the Greek letter rho. So CHR is the first three letters of Christ. So he believes that this symbol, this is the symbol that he saw in his dreams, is basically the symbol calling him into battle. And they said in this dream, if you worship this symbol, if you have this symbol with you, Christ is with you, and in this name you shall conquer. You will win this battle in the name of Christ if you convert. So he woke up, he plastered this symbol over his shields, over his flags, everything that he was bringing into battle, he did in the name of Christ. And he ended up winning that battle and conquering more territory. So this experience really pushes him to convert even further. And it's believed that he officially converts to Christianity on his deathbed. In 337, I believe that was, when he dies, Christianity becomes the official religion, or I'm sorry, that Christianity becomes the official religion of the Roman Empire under a few centuries later under the Emperor Theodosius. So Theodosius and his wife, and so Theodosius converts the entire empire to Christianity. So it takes a long time for Christianity to really become popular and that paganism to die away. Now, a couple of things happened in between Constantine, who ruled both the West and East Roman Empire before the split, and Theodosius, who only ruled the eastern portion of the empire. So what happens to Western Roman Empire? So backing it up to right around after Constantine's death. So by 395 CE, about 60 years later, the Roman Empire is essentially functioning as two separate places. So we have the eastern part under Constantinople, which is over here, and then we have the western part, which goes all the way up to Britain, all the way through the Iberian Peninsula, North African coast, and the Italian Peninsula, kind of governed as under Rome still. So it's essentially functioning as two separate places. So this is kind of the split of the Roman Empire. So we're going to come back to that map. By about 370 CE, we also see these barbarian tribes from Asia and Northern Europe that are attacking both halves of the empire. So from Eastern Europe and Russia, we have the Huns migrating from Central Asia. We also have the Visigoths coming from kind of the same region. We have other Germanic tribes such as the Vandals, and yes, this is where we get the word vandal or vandalism, because they were not very civilized. They were barbarian tribes, so they were raping people, they were stealing things, they were setting things on fire, they were very violent, and they were kind of tearing through all of the Roman Empire. We also have the Anglo-Saxons, which is where we get the word England from the Angles tribe here, and then Anglo-Saxons is still today how you refer to people of British descent. So we have all of these tribes that we know as the Germanic tribes. And so by about 370, they start attacking kind of the outer portions of the empire. And remember, we've already had this political split. So the Germanic tribes start to take over those Roman lands, and hundreds of little kingdoms start to take the place of the Western Roman Empire in Europe. So by about 476 CE, we have the fall of the Western Roman Empire, as well as the establishment or the solidification of the Byzantine Empire, which, remember, Byzantium is where Constantinople was founded, and this eastern portion becomes Byzantium, or the Byzantine Empire. Then we have kind of this Frankish kingdom up here, and then this purple down here, you can see, it says Umayyad Caliphate. That's kind of our context here. So when we learned about the Umayyad Empire and how the Islamic Empire was expanding through conquest, who they were fighting against were the Byzantines and those Gothic or Germanic tribes that were coming down from more northern and eastern Europe. So by 476, the Western Roman Empire has fallen. The Byzantine Empire is still thriving, and they continue to thrive for about 1,000 years. So after these kingdoms take the place of the Western Roman Empire in Europe, we have a few things that happen. So initially, there's no system for collecting taxes. So there aren't real strong government systems, because those barbarian tribes that turn into these kingdoms are basically just tribes. They are not civilizations, right? So there's not really one centralized government in any of these places. It's just people who kind of have things in common. So these are very, very small kingdoms. Each have their own individual king, and each are constantly at war with each other. So your neighbor about 5 miles away might be at war with you at that time. And so you have this tribe of warriors that lives in your land, and you protect them and you lead them, and you go to war with the next kingdom. If you win, you get their land as well. And so it kind of, or you can form alliances, right? So there's alliances, there's war, these are always changing. There's a desperate need for resources, not only wealth, but just food, water, stone to build things with, other materials for warfare. This is very bare bones, kind of totally clean slate for Europe. And because of that, because people were more worried about their safety and about their resources, people were losing interest in learning. Because without the safety of just living your life and knowing where your next meal is coming from, it's a little bit more of a priority than sitting down and reading or creating art or creating some of those more cultural achievements that we've learned about in other civilizations. So this is truly kind of the bare bones civilization. So what was lost with the fall of the Roman Empire? So these large cities that they had, such as Rome, but also many other cities in the Roman Empire. London was originally a city in the Roman Empire, so all over the empire there were these large urban cities. So those were all lost with the fall of the Roman Empire because there were no resources to keep up that high population. People kind of had to fend for themselves. Also, there was no more democratic or even a centralized government. So it was back to those monarchies or those kingdoms that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And that, like I said, the centralized government was lost as well. With that, there was no more focus on law or justice. So it was it went back to whatever practices were common in these kingdoms became the law. So if a king decided that this was illegal, something was illegal, like, I don't know, wearing your shoes on the wrong feet, then that became illegal and that could be punishable in whatever way they saw fit. So there was no more kind of trials or democratic system that would protect the people or protect criminals. As I just discussed, reading and writing also went out the window. So pretty much the only people, there was a small select group that was still literate that we're going to talk about on the next slide. And with the breakdown in this, there is danger and chaos everywhere. So trade really breaks down. So people have to go back to the land, back to the rural areas, and creating their own resources. So even though trade was thriving in other places such as the Silk Road or in the Islamic Empire, trade is very, very much diminished in Europe. So the one major thing that remains from the Roman Empire is the Christian population and the notion of Christianity. So Germanic tribes actually convert, and because of that, they begin to grow in power. Remember, we talked about religion as a unifying force. So by converting to the places where most of their followers were, they not only gained more followers for Christianity, but they also grew in power and solidified their existing power. They also created what are called monasteries. We're going to talk about this a little bit more after next class, but these monasteries were places where monks or religious men kind of lived. They spent their whole lives there studying Christianity, studying the Bible, and these were really the only places that kept literacy alive. Everywhere else was kind of chaos, but these were places of learning and specifically of Christian scholarship. So you can see in this map, this is the map I said we would come back to. These darker purple spots are the only places where Christianity was really common. So of course we have kind of this Middle East part, we have the Turkish peninsula here, we have North Africa, a little bit of Spain, a little bit here, and that's by 325, so that's around the time of Constantine. By 600, when Theodosius over here converts to Christianity and converts the whole empire to Christianity, the entire Eastern Roman Empire becomes Christian, as well as the Germanic tribes who convert all of this area to Christianity by about 600 CE. And then you can see kind of these Christian centers. So they aren't really cities, but these are where the major monasteries were. So the most powerful, successful Germanic kingdoms was the Franks. And yes, this is where we get the word France from. So Franks were where France currently is. And these were led by a king called Clovis at one time. So they promoted cultural changes across Europe. So they blended these Germanic customs with the Greco-Roman culture, or the Greek-Roman culture. So they blended the language from German. They took parts of Latin, and they created languages such as French, such as Spanish, those kinds of things. And they were primarily warriors and famous for using the battle axe. And they were not strong leaders because of that. They were very brutal warriors, but they were somewhat of a stable civilization. But you can see all of the surrounding kind of kingdoms that they would fight against and that they had to unify before. These were all the conquests of Clovis, which means all the places he had to conquer to unify under that green color under the Frankish kingdom. So as I said before, in German society, besides the Frankish kingdom, so again, we're going to talk more about them next video lesson, the Roman law no longer exists, and is replaced by common law. And common law is any law that is derived from custom and judicial precedent, or judicial practices that happened beforehand. So if one person got killed for putting his shoes on the wrong foot, the next person would also meet that same consequence. That was the precedent. So rather than having a written law that explicitly states what punishment fits what crime, or what is a crime in that kingdom, that can continue on or be sustained king after king after king, common law kind of changes all the time and is just customary practice. There's no one that says they have to do this. So two specific forms of common law that we're going to dive more into depth next class is the vergeld, which literally translates to money for a man. So it's the amount paid to a victim's family by a wrongdoer. So basically, if you did wrong, you could either pay the family back, and depending on the victim, there was a much higher vergeld for a crime. So a much higher rate for a crime against a noble versus a slave or peasant, if there was any at all. The second part of common law, which is the more famous one, is the ordeal. So the ordeal is a process for determining guilt that is based upon divine intervention, or intervention by God. So these people really relied on Jesus and God and their faith to form the basis of how they handled their problems. And if there wasn't some mystical sign from God or from Jesus in their society, then they would take that into consideration when determining their guilt. So the person who is accused of a crime is subject to some sort of physical ordeal or some sort of physical test. So they might be dunked in water, as you see here. They might have their hand plunged into a pot of boiling water. All of these are very torturous kind of ordeals. They might burn the subject, they might drown them, and if they were harmed, if the victim was harmed, it meant that God did not want to save you, and you were guilty, and you deserved that punishment, and you would likely die. If you were not harmed, then God would intervene to save you, and you were seen as innocent. So if they plunged you into some water and you floated, that was seen as being a sign from God, so you were innocent, right? So we're going to dive into the vergeld and the ordeal process next class, but this is kind of where we're going to start off. So just kind of these seeds of civilization are starting to come back in what we call the early Middle Ages or the early medieval period.